You know, that was a very interesting fact that I learned about you yesterday, that your name at birth was supposed to be Michael.
That's right. That's right. And they dropped the MI. They went with CHAEL. And I don't know if that's interesting. I mean, your mom tells you, I don't know if that's interesting or not, but that's my story. And you know what? It is very annoying to tell it because people will promptly then, so your name's Cole. Your name's Cole. It's Michael. They dropped the MI, so you're Cole. I've had arguments with people before where they've insisted to me that my name is Cole. It's like, this really isn't going very well.
Yeah.
It went to, and I wasn't like Mr. Don Juan, but if I went out and I was like trying to meet a girl or something, I started giving them fake names. And then when they would find, like if things ended up working out, then that became a problem. That the first thing I ever told them was a lie. It's like, no, you don't understand. It's in a bar. It's loud. This is anxiety-filled to start with. And you don't know what a Chael is. You don't know what a Chael is. It was easier to just tell you my name was, I actually went with Billy. It was based on Billy the Kid.
Oh, Billy the Kid. I like that. You know what? That does that makes for a really difficult conversation, though, when they say, because this is what her girlfriends say to her. Ready? If he lies about his name, he'll lie about anything.
I was in line at a checkout one time with this gal. Everything had been going just fine. And I get up and I gotta pay my credit card. So when I take out my wallet, I leave it there, and she like comes over my shoulder and she's reading the license, which does not match Billy McCarthy, aka Billy. It says Chael Sonnen. And I mean, it was such a disaster. It's like, if you could just give me 2 seconds to explain this. I was actually planning to tell you this.
Yeah. Yes.
I gave you a wrong name, but I have a good reason for doing it. It never worked, And
never
the internet,
worked.
you used to be able to rob a bank, move 2 cities over, and you could live the rest of your life. Now with the internet, you can't get away with anything.
Nothing. Everything we do is just there. It's like, you got to, anything I record, every time I record something, I'm always like, okay, make sure, because you don't know how people are going to interpret things too. That's the other thing. It's like, you didn't mean anything by it, but yet all of a sudden it's like, whoa, I didn't mean this. It's insane. Back when we were growing up, I'm older than you, but there was, not only was there no internet, like it was a landline. That was your communication. So word didn't spread unless it was like a rumor at school, so people got to live their life. It's a vastly different time. It's really crazy.
I used that term landline on my son last week. My son's 9. I used the term dial tone. He had no idea what I was saying to him. He's like, what do you mean a dial tone? What is a dial tone? What is a land? He had no idea. And there's little things that come along that will really aid you. But that's one of them. I mean, that's one of the things that sucks. By the way, I got to tell you something. I got up at 12:01 this morning, 12:01, because Netflix dropped a series of 6 called Mr. McMahon on Vince McMahon. Did you watch some of this?
I'll tell you what, I just saw what I saw on my TV, and I could be wrong. It said it was starting October 6th or something, but I have watched the trailer again and again. I am riveted. What a story. What a life. I wasn't even super familiar with Vince McMahon. I'm much more familiar with UFC, obviously, and Dana White. But what a businessman, what an intense human being. The story with his children and the steroids and the stepping down and all this. I mean, he has lived quite a life, and what an intense character. What do you know? Like, what are you excited about this for? I mean, you're a big WWE fan, yeah?
Yeah, well, and I was bigger at one time. Like around the 6th grade, I kind of left it until what came along that they later called the Attitude Era, but it was basically when Stone Cold Steve Austin said, take your John 3:16, Austin 3:16 says, I just whipped your ass. Like that brought everybody back to wrestling. By the way, that's an expression in the business called going into business for yourself. And what that means is a vernacular is when you're on live TV, you have a scripted promo. You have 28 seconds to deliver it. The guy standing there with the microphone and the earpiece is going to give you a blink what it means to get out because they're throwing to something else, and you tear the script up, throw it up in the air, and then you go into business for yourself. You will generally come back through the curtain, which is called gorilla position, which is where Vince is sitting, and probably be fired. And security will escort you off the property. Or you'll hit it out of the park, like Stone Cold did, and become the biggest asset in wrestling. But ass, while not being 4 letters, was still absolute profanity. They did not use that back then. They were partaking to family entertainment and adults and kids get in free and bring a can of soup and get $1 off. I mean, it was one of these vibes back then. So when he said ass, gave the middle finger, as simple as that might be right now, I would compare it to Elvis Presley, who apparently like gyrated his hips a little bit on stage. Not even in a sexual motion. He just moved his hips, and that was forbidden. And there was parents everywhere telling their little girls they could not go to his concert. I learned about that from my mother. My mother was one of those little girls who was forbidden from going to Elvis because he gyrated his hips, and what seems so simple, but when Stone Cold used the middle finger and he said the word ass, it had never been done. It was so risque. And it was just interesting, like, to relive that. I don't really care who's Vince or who the character is. I don't really care. He's entertaining. That was his job. And that was our exchange. Our exchange was my time and money, but you've got to entertain me. And I feel like Vincent K. McMahon held up his end of the bargain. Like that or not. People aren't going to like that because Vince is a terrible character right now. He was an entertainer. I got to give him that.
You know, it's funny because it's the same thing with Dana, right? It's like people have issues with him. People have issues with Vince McMahon. And it's like, if you want a buddy, if you want a friend, get a puppy. Like, these guys are running major businesses, and the job is to promote and to entertain you. If he came out and was very nice to everybody all the time and was never stirring up crap, why would you be interested? It's almost like it doesn't resonate with people that is the job. Vince McMahon has to be that character. And Dana White, look, Dana White is not going to coddle you. Dana White runs his business. He runs it hard. There's always going to be criticism, and he doesn't care, and he keeps pushing through. Guys like that, captains of industry, I respect them because they don't waver. They don't change. They stay the course. And Vince McMahon, I got to tell you, this documentary has gotten me wildly interested in learning more about WWE and him, and I can't wait to see it. You can tell it's really well produced. I think it's done by the guys who did Tiger King, and it is compelling. Really compelling.
Yeah, no, it is really fascinating. And, you know, for Vince, so many interesting terms, but I maintain, I like politics. Probably my favorite thing is politics. I've never seen a Super Bowl, for example. I know what football is, but I've never seen an entire game. I could tell you political debates for something small that have been done all over the country. I like that battle. I like that there's warfare with mannerisms, that there's going to be an alpha on the stage, that someone's going to win and someone's going to lose the fight, and they're never going to touch one another. I find that interesting. And when Vince McMahon went through the steroid trial, he did everything he could do to protect his business and protect what was known as kayfabe. Kayfabe is an expression, a vernacular from professional wrestling, but these guys were so broke, they're going from town to town. When they would get to a new city to perform, and they were on the road 250 days a year, they want to call home to their wife and let their wife know they've made it safe. So they would make a collect call from kayfabe. Now, that wouldn't cost them any money. A collect call back then, you could ask the other person to pick up the charges, and the operator would say, who's it from? So when they would say kayfabe, the wife would decline the call. They'd hang it up with no charges, but kayfabe meant, honey, I've made it safe. I'll call you from the next town. So it was one of these things where until the grave, you protect the business. If two guys are feuding, they do not travel together. They do not ride on the same airplane. They do not stay in the same hotel. They do not get to the arena and walk in the same door. They lived the character. And in 1988, when Vince went through the steroid trial, 89 rather, he got asked under oath what he believed that was going to bring down the empire, which is this a competition or is this a performance? And he had to answer that under oath, and he believed he was going to go out of business. But what he found out to his surprise is people don't really care about the wrestling. They care about the entertainment, to the point that he even renamed his entire company and just admitted it's entertainment. And he still got kids to cry when their favorite guy lost and buy a t-shirt on the way out the door. He evoked an emotion, and nobody has ever done that so openly and honestly as Vince McMahon. To be able to tell you to your face, this is what I'm going to do, and I'm going to pry, and I'm going to go after your emotions, whether it's real or not. You're going to be entertained. Sit back and enjoy the ride. And sold out arenas, 60,000 at a pop sometimes.
Wow. Well, Chael, let's think about that, right? It's like, you know, your thing is WWE, and you're saying your thing is politics, right? So for me, just replace politics with entertainment at large, right? So whether it's, and I'm going to make a confession here, I like bad reality TV. I like all the Vanderpump Rules and all the Housewives. I'm just into that sort of drama. Now people say, is it fake, right? That's the big question. Oh, it's all fake. And it's like, no. It's produced, but it's not fake. Those wrestlers are athletic to a fare thee well. I mean, they couldn't be more athletic. They couldn't be given more of their body, their mind, and their spirit in that ring. Okay, that's number one. Respect that. Number two, the outcome may be predetermined, but make no mistake, it is very real what they're doing. And I think what Vince McMahon did and what reality shows do so well is he orchestrated. He's a puppet master. In fact, that's the poster for that show. If you see it on Netflix, it is him with the marionette strings, okay? And with the ring. It's brilliant advertising. And to that point that you made about emotion, we spoke about this recently. Emotion is everything. It's what made the UFC the UFC. It was the Ultimate Fighter. Chael, the Ultimate Fighter, it did something. It humanized all the fighters. It gave them a story, right? So before that, Bloodsport. It had its core audience, yes, and it was doing well. But when it started The Ultimate Fighter, it said, what if we lived in a house with these guys, got to know them? Now you know, okay, that guy has 2 kids and he's having some trouble with his work and he needs the money and he needs to make it into the UFC or else. This guy has a wife that's sick, blah, blah, blah. Whatever the story may be, it's the story that we come for. And WWE tells a compelling story. So the whole it's fake thing never made sense to me. Like, it just doesn't. And emotion is king. And Chael, by the way, in my business, in writing, what took me easily 10 to 15 years to really know and intellectualize. Now, I knew it, but I didn't really use it to my power, was the fact that emotion is the only thing that matters. Chael, I don't care if it's a horror movie, if it's a drama, you have to relate to those characters, or you can, when you watch a movie and just like, I'm bored. It's not because the dialogue is bad necessarily, it's because you're not emotionally invested. Emotion, be it in sports, entertainment, and in life, is what drives us, what compels us, and what puts asses in seats.
Yeah, and very fascinating too, when somebody gets behind a camera and they get to play it up. Like the first thing they'll do is they'll go to hair and then they'll go to makeup and they'll start to story. And then they'll start to be nicer than they actually are. And they'll all of a sudden become a little bit more religious than they actually are.
Yes.
There was a TV show that came out. I was in the 5th grade. I want to say that was around 87, 88, but it was called Roseanne, with Roseanne Barr. They didn't believe that this could make it. And the reason they didn't think they could make it is this was a regular family where he worked a 9-to-5 job that he didn't like and came home with a sore back and would crack a beer and look forward to watching the football game on a little television that didn't even have a remote control. And like Hollywood didn't think that could make it. They were too real. There was nothing to aspire to be. She wasn't a rock star. She had a weight issue. The kids didn't love them. In fact, they were a little bit bratty. There wasn't a maid in the house. And, when Huxtable was the doctor, like they were washing their own clothes and putting them on a line. Like they didn't think it could make it. And it was so incredible. And I use that example because in pro wrestling, some of the greatest storylines were the ones that were not embellished. They actually went the other way. They didn't make them into too much of a superhero. They made him more a regular guy that you might encounter at the Quick Mart up the road where you're pumping your own gas and you're a little worried. That was really interesting. And then you developed the heel, and that was so hard. Nobody wanted to be the heel, and you can't make money unless you have a bad guy. In fact, you can't have a good guy unless you have a bad guy. If they're all good guys and there's no bad, and I just bring that, it's a hard thing to get somebody to sign up for. And too many people, they get too sensitive, and then Vince demanded that you live the life. So if you went places, and I actually experienced this as a little kid, I crossed paths with The Undertaker in St. Paul, Minnesota in the airport, and I went up to say hello to him, and he wouldn't even look at me and pass by and wouldn't do autographs. And I'm sure that was very difficult for him to do, particularly to a little kid, but he had to stay in character. It's the way it was, and it was one of the reasons you couldn't have any heels. They can't take the booze. We see that in MMA. You get these tough guys, but they're fake tough. They can't take the booze, no matter how much money they could make or how much opportunity would come their way. They can't take the booze. And it's an interesting thing in life. And I only contend because I believe that Vince is one of the people that can take the booze. And a minute ago when I told you everything that you need to know about government, I think if you just study the history of professional wrestling, which in 36 different states was licensed and sanctioned by the state, funded by the taxpayer, because they thought it was real. They thought it was a real sport. The House, the Senate, the governors, 36 states signed it into law. Those same 36 governors are still alive today. They're just U.S. senators and U.S. congressmen. They're some of the most powerful people in the world, and they didn't understand that that was a fake performance they were watching as opposed to a real sporting event, and that's fascinating to me.
Fascinating. You know what? They're method actors, right? It's really no different than my business because, these actors, like Daniel Day-Lewis, for instance, right, is a very famous method actor where when he's on set, he is the character. He's Abe Lincoln. He's not Daniel Day-Lewis all through shooting. Not a lot of actors really do that much, but the ones that do it are very intense about it. And they are the guy at the airport, right? The Undertaker that was living in the moment. And I think it's fascinating too that you were saying, first thing that you said about Roseanne, I think it was even done, and Roseanne did it in a really, really mainstream way where I'm a sitcom writer, okay? And I know on Fresh Prince, for instance, it was a very lighthearted show. It's very, very different. Shows like Roseanne coming off of shows like Happy Days, right? Laverne and Shirley, Three's Company, where everything was perfect at the end and everything was settled and the characters were shiny and they were buffed out and they looked good. And Roseanne was a woman, a bigger woman, like you said. And her husband was this big guy, beer drinking, had problems with his job, et cetera. That was and it really started, if you look at it, with All in the Family. You want to talk about making a character that was unlikable.
Sure.
Archie Bunker is he was the first, and that's a really hard thing to pull off. That is a really hard thing to pull off. But when we look at the idea of being okay with being the heel, I'm going to turn it around on you because you successfully did that, Chael.
There was a moment in our sport, and it was with Conor McGregor. In fact, it was his last fight, but he had lost the fight to Dustin Poirier. He was broken, quite literally. They're waiting with a stretcher. They need to get him. I mean, the medical professionals need to get him out of the ring. And he calls, while sitting down, he calls Joe Rogan over. And Joe gets down on a knee because Conor can't stand. And Conor cuts a scathing promo talking about his opponent's wife and personal DMs that they had on something the kids used to call Twitter. And people hated Conor. What a terrible person. And he just revealed his character. And it's like, well, maybe you have an entertainer that agreed to give you your money's worth until they fade to black and roll the credits, which was the exchange. You have a character who stayed in character and went down with the ship, knowing you were going to hate him, knowing you were going to turn on him, but knowing that you spent your $59 and gave your 2 hours to have him leave you with something. And quite frankly, I don't know which it was. Maybe Conor's a real scumbag, but maybe he's not. There is the other option, which is he's a great entertainer who did not come out of character just because things didn't go his way. And I just share for you, it's very interesting. Vince McMahon came out yesterday, puts out a press release and claims that he got an early release and got to see this footage, and he's very disappointed with Netflix and that they didn't reveal Vince the person as he had hoped and they had an opportunity to do. Instead, they chose to dig into the character, Mr. McMahon, and how unfortunate that is. What a bunch of crap. The guy's in trouble. He took a dump on some girl's head. They're suing him. They threw him out of his own company. Like, there's nobody that could come into Vince's aid. There's no way to make him look good. If you go and make Vince look good and you shine him up right now, you go down with him like it's just the rules. Vince knows that. He knew full well this is probably the last thing that will ever be produced at his age and with where he is at in society. And if he wants it made, there's only one way that it's going to see the light of day, which is to give the people what they want, which is evil, awful Vince. And that's what he did. And it's the same thing that they do in politics. It's the same push and pull. It's the same character. It's fascinating to me.
He's playing the heel now. He's playing the heel on this whole thing, right? He's complaining about this when in fact, that's what we're talking about. Like, I can't express this enough. We're talking about Conor making that comment, right? About Poirier's wife. We're talking about Vince complaining about this. All the way to the end, they are that character no matter what. If he came out and said, I'm really happy with this documentary, boring. I contend that he is aware of everything. He is aware of everything. He knows what he's doing at all times up until right now. He's as sharp as ever. That's my guess. And Conor did that night, and it made everybody that we're still talking about it all this time later. It works. It just works. If people are nice or they drop character, that's the worst thing they can do is drop character and become something else. Conor did it best, Chael. I'll contend when he was in the ring, was in the cage being interviewed by Rogan, and he said, look, to all these people, and all the people that I work with and all the people that says, I just wanted to apologize for absolutely none of it, right? The best, like, bro, I'm a writer and I see it all coming from a mile away. He tricked me. He got me. I'm like, that was the best left turn I've ever seen. And brilliant. He stayed in it and he's great. Now, by the way, when he comes back to the UFC, that's another thing. And I'm curious, like, is there too much time passing with Conor? Eventually it has to phase out. Like, are we almost there? Because every time I turn around, this guy is next month. We're fighting next month. We're fighting in 2023. Definitely 2023. Oh, no, 2024. Now the other day, 2025. I mean, is he motivated to come back? Is it worth it for him to come back? Can he get motivated to do a full training camp? And when does the audience and the UFC fans stop seeing him as a legitimate contender and a great fighter with that great left and start seeing him only as the guy on the Lamborghini cigarette boat? as the rich guy. Like, it's a really, does he, in your opinion, Chael, does he want to, does he have any, is there any benefits to him coming back to the UFC?
I love this topic because one thing about Conor that is like an onion, like as you start to peel him back, or if you ever meet him in person, he's not only not arrogant and not flamboyant, if you will. If there's not a camera on, he hedges on being shy. He would be interested in who you are. He doesn't say very much. Now, anybody could pull out so much as an iPhone, and if he sees that red light, it's a different guy. I mean, this is a real consummate professional, and there's a famous expression they say that Marvin Hagler said, but they're actually wrong. It was said by Sugar Ray Leonard, and he said it is very difficult to wake up at 5 a.m. and go for a run when you're sleeping in silk pajamas, which basically just means a rich man can't fight. And that isn't totally true. I mean, Oscar De La Hoya was very rich, and so was Floyd Mayweather. There's some people that are true competitors. There's some guys that are just dum-dums and they don't know any different. But no matter how much coke Conor's going to take, I can tell you there is nothing like walking out in front of that building of 17,000 on their feet, whether they're cheering you or booing you. There is no replacement. It is why athletes all across the board, doesn't matter if it's basketball or what it is, when they retire, have nothing to look forward to but alcoholism and drug abuse. They're trying to refuel that. So when Conor talks about I'm going to come back, he doesn't necessarily need to make that walk to get it. He can just come out and say it. And if the same people in the same brotherhood and the same MMA, and you and I, just by example, do our part and pitch it and give him the attention to fuel that drug, no, I don't know that he would come back. If you were to ignore him and stop talking about him, he would be far more likely. And one thing that is different about Conor is he is not afraid to take an ass whipping. And I will know so many people that will talk about, well, he's never going to come back. And then the very first reason they'll say is they start identifying themselves. They start going, he can't beat that guy, or he's not good, or he's not quick enough. It's like, well, I've been a lamb walking to slaughter as everybody else that fought Jon Jones. I knew exactly how that night was going to go when I pulled the hood up and put my mouthpiece in. But some people will walk out and take that ass whipping. And I only share that with you that when people think they know Conor and they want to do it because they try to reverse and put themselves in his shoes and he's got enough money, that's not why everybody does it. Sometimes there's something else. Sometimes it's a lifestyle, the competitive drive, or you and your coach are so close. It's what you guys do together. I was very close with a relationship like that with my coach, with Clayton Hires. It's what we did together. And I don't know what the outcome's going to be. That's later, but I know every day leading up into it, I'm going to get to be with Clayton Hires. That was a big motivation for me. So it's a tough question to know if Conor will do it. If people keep talking about him, though, and I'm sharing for you, that's the only thing he can get. Like Michael Chandler, they made up a weight class. They made up that it's going to be 5 rounds. If there's no title, it's not 5 rounds, it's 3. Well, they were going to fight 5 rounds. They might as well fight 4 rounds. They're going to fight at 170, but you don't have to make 170. You can actually make 171. Well, if the weights don't matter, let's just not even weigh them in. It's not a contendership fight, but we're going to pretend you're both at 55, and whoever wins this, if your name is Chandler, you're going to fight for a title, and if your name is Conor, you could lose it, and if you want to fight for a title, we'll put you in a title, and a whole different weight class named 155. I mean, there was nothing about this match that made sense, but it made dollars. As a matter of fact, before it got canceled, they were sitting on 25 million plus at the box office that they largely had to return for people that knew the laws of Nevada, which wasn't very many of them, and they ended up still being a record night. But I'm just sharing with you, like, yeah, Conor can still do some really exciting stuff. And lifestyle-wise, I think his coach used to have a little better handle on him than he's got right now. I lived a similar life to Conor, I guess, in that we both used to be plumbers and our fathers were plumbers, and you knew what it was like to get up and have a dream to do something else, but this is what you were going to do in the in-between. And it does appear like Conor's folks have lost their way. My son is not going to be snorting coke off of a chick's ass that isn't his wife on a Lamborghini goat anywhere in the world covered in tech. I will tell you that I will have control of my son. And it seems as though the roles have reversed. When Conor started paying the bills and he started buying the cars, it seems like he took over the relationship. And that is a mistake that I will never make. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, you make enough money and the people around you just become yes people. It's just, and I don't know Conor's people. I don't pretend to. But it's just, every actor I've been involved with, you get to a certain point of fame and you have people around you that say yes. And the ones that say no, I see it as, and you can tell me, Chael, because you've been in this world, like, don't you appreciate the people that give it to you straight? I mean, it seems like 90% of the people that surround the entourage of anybody famous, fighter, actor, whatever, are yes people. But isn't it way more productive to you as a human being to have people that just tell you the truth no matter what, especially when it's something you don't want to hear? And if I was around Conor, I would tell him, if you're going to fight, keep pushing. If you keep pushing it off, look, Father Time beats everybody, right? He's undisputed. That's number one. He came off of a vicious leg break. I think the faster he gets in there, the better. And I don't know. There's something that's making him not get in there. And I don't know if it's all the money. I don't know if it's the training. But as a fan, I cannot wait to see Conor fight. I wasn't super excited about him versus Chandler, and I don't know why. I really don't. But just to see him in there is going to be a thrill. I hope it happens.
And Mike, you're so right. Like, sadly, as human beings, we don't get better with time. And sadly, as human beings, we don't get better at something by not doing it. Like, the writing is on the wall for how the competition of Conor versus anyone under contract is going to go. There's 776 people under contract, not named Conor McGregor. I'm not positive he can beat any of them. I don't say that to be a dick. He wasn't beating them before. He wasn't beating them back when he was pretty good at beating them. Now he can't settle in on a weight class. He was a 45-pounder that's going to fight at 70 and is fighting with Dana White because he wants to fight at 85. I mean, as soon as you get done making weight, you get done winning matches. The 99% of athletes in this sport, combat, that retire will tell you this reason or the next, or I want to thank my family, my coaches, but 99.9% of them retire because they don't want to beat the scale anymore. That is the number one thing that drives people out of this sport. And most people, unlike Conor, can't just go pick a weight. They can't just change the weight. Today I'm 45, tomorrow I'm 55, next day I'm 70, then I'm 71. If we're in this jurisdiction, I'm wearing shorts and I'll fight all the way up to 185. I mean, not for nothing. That isn't the way the sport works. You have categories and you have to make it. It is the number one thing that drives people out. They're not done competing. It's not even that they can't do it anymore. They're done living that lifestyle. They're done going to bed hungry. They're done putting in an extra 3 miles just to burn calories because they're dying for a Snickers bar so bad. And I only share that no, Conor's not going to win. And no, there's not anybody that Conor can beat. But that's not what it's always about. For some guys, there is a competitiveness. For some guys, it is a drive. For some guys, hey, I know I can't beat that guy. I maybe couldn't have beaten him 5 years ago, but I'm not wondering that. I'm just wondering, can I still push forward? Can I still get those laps in? Can I still jump as many rounds of rope? Can I live the lifestyle? Can I stay sober for 60 days for a reason? There's other reasons that people fight, and that part of the story isn't as glamorous, but I think they're wrong. I think, like Roseanne, if they came out and told those stories, which is this forces me into the gym, I've got discipline to work hard, but I don't have discipline to not put this powder up my nose. I think it's compelling, and they should come out and tell it. But that's a difference. And how far and how developed to the character are you? He's never blown coke in front of the world, but he shows up on camera after he just blew coke. Like, what's the difference?
Yes.
What difference does it make? He pulled out of a fight claiming that he's got a discolored pinky toe, which he never said was broken or not. But meanwhile, he conducted an interview with a fracture that was so bad his leg was split in 2 different places and they got a gurney waiting to carry him out. I mean, this is a legitimately tough guy.
Right.
But he does some things different.
Yes. Yeah. It's funny they said, right. He had a little pinky toe problem, like you said. And it's everybody's up in arms about it. Yet he just broke his leg literally in half. And he's talking about Poirier's wife, right?
Right.
So,
I mean, what a stud. Like, you would never question how tough that guy. He's sitting there demanding the interview. You go into shock. That's the very first. You go into shock. You can't believe you start freaking out when these things happen. He conducts an interview like the guy is a stone cold badass.
Sitting on his ass. You remember what he said, right? He's like, I don't know, man. It's like the whole thing, the deal. I don't know. It's broken, whatever. Like, it was like, what?
Right.
It's like he brought up, what's his name? Chris Weidman. And he goes, I think it's like a Weidman deal. I don't know. Or what? Shockingly tough. Shockingly tough.
Speaking of another stone cold badass, Chris Weidman doesn't fully get his credit. Like, I don't know if people really understand how good Weidman was when he was on top. I don't know if they understand how good he is now. Like, Chris Weidman 5 months ago versus Israel Adesanya. Israel was the champion. Weidman would have been a rough night out for him. And I'm just sharing for you. I'm divulging off the topic, but it is a very interesting thing. And yet, for Conor to think that he can pull out for a discolored pinky toe after he just showed what a tough guy he is, like, man, he doesn't really have a whole lot left to prove. But if this is what he chooses to do, or if it keeps him sober, or whatever is going on, maybe there is other reasons to fight.
It's funny, you brought up 2 things. First off, Weidman, I don't know if you know this, but Chris Weidman is a pretty good, he's an actor.
Yes.
And and he refers to me as his acting coach because I did a show with him, Kevin Can Wait. We shot it in New York. It was a sitcom, and he was a semi-regular on the show. And he came in, he did an episode with Adam Sandler, actually, was in the same episode as him. And Chris had never acted a day in his life. And it speaks to his resilience, his willingness to win. He wanted to learn everything. And he came to me and he said, can you help me? I was a writer on the show, and he's like, can you help me with this? We worked for hours, days, weeks on his acting performance. And that guy is just a winner in life. He is just a tremendous human being. And you're right. I don't think people give him enough credit for what he did, not only to Anderson Silva that night and then the next time, but like just his career at large, the person that he is. He's a family guy. He's he's a stud. He's amazing. And the second thing you said was Snickers bar. Do you know, I'm going to go off topic for a second here, but I'm going to tell you a very long story, very short. I was in Africa in 2001, and we were doing the movie Ali, okay? And at the time, Will Smith had a trainer by the name of Daryl Foster, ex-boxer, worked with Sugar Ray Leonard, actually, worked in Leonard's camp for years. Daryl's a little older than I am. And he is, hands down, the most intense human being you will ever meet. He's David Goggins times 5, okay? He's just super intense. So he's training Will to be Ali, and he's a world-class trainer and a really smart guy. And Will is listening to everything he tells him, of course, right? And I get picked up on the movie to go do videography work. I wasn't writing, I was doing video work, and I was sent to Africa. Now, I had not been part of the movie up until that point. So they had shot a bunch of it in Chicago and LA and et cetera. So I was kind of midstream. And here's this intense guy. You remember, Chael, I used to be 240 pounds. I was really big. I wasn't in shape at all. And we get to Africa only to discover he's like, all right, everybody's in camp. Everybody's in camp. Will, he called him Champ, like Ali. Champ gets up at 5:30 in the morning. We do road work. And I'm like, all right, yeah, I can film that. I'll just have to get up early. He goes, no. You're running. Oh. You're running with us, okay? And I'm like, I'm not a runner. I'm not built as a runner, okay? I'll do it, but I just can't, I can't really run. 3 miles, you got to do it. Well, long story short, I had started adhering to their schedule like everybody else because we were in fight camp, okay? Boiled chicken every night because that's what Ali ate when he was doing the Rumble in the Jungle. So Will was mimicking everything that Ali did, right down to the food, to the science and the diet and everything like that and the working out. I started to get really crazy. I couldn't eat any more boiled chicken. So I called a friend of mine named Craig Duncan back in the States. And I said, do me a favor, send me a Snickers bar. Okay? Send me a Snickers bar. I'm dying for a Snickers bar.
Sure.
Make it discreet and just send it to this address in Mozambique, Africa. Brother, he sends a case of king-sized Snickers bars to Africa, which are then intercepted by Daryl Foster.
Oh, no!
Yes.
Why did he go through your package? How'd Daryl find this?
I have no idea. It was in my name. I think maybe Craig had put, production or something. Maybe because everything has to go through the production company so he doesn't pay for it. Bro, I don't know that Daryl's intercepted it. In fact, I even forgot about the Snickers that I ordered because now I'm like kind of getting into the working out and I'm feeling better. I'm like, I'm part of a camp. This is amazing, right? Bro, he goes, team meeting, mandatory, in the living room. Okay, we're staying in this big mansion in Mozambique. It's the presidential compound. That's the house we're staying in. Michael Mann, the director, Jamie Foxx, they're staying next door. Massive, beautiful house. I'm playing pool. I'm messing around. Mandatory meeting. I'm like, does that mean me? It means everybody. All right, whatever. Okay, and I'm sitting there, Chael, and I'm listening, and Daryl is pontificating about the meaning of camp and team. And if there's one bad apple, it spoils the bunch. And Chael, I'm looking at other people like my buddy Pierce, and I'm like, he's right. He is right.
Oh, no.
He's not wrong, And then he starts slowly going down this road of, when someone disrespects it, the diet is the most important thing, and we're here together. And I'm going, diet. Uh-oh, wait a second, okay? And he pulls out a case of king-size Snickers, and he goes, I'm just going to tell whoever did this. And finally, Chael, the guilt got to me. And I stood up and I said, yes, it was me. It was me. However, I ordered a Snickers bar. I did not order a case of Snickers. Okay.
The Costco box, right?
Massive, like the one you see at the convenience store where they got to make a profit, right? And they got to sell a ton of them. Bro, I'll never forget this moment as long as I live. Daryl looked at me. The room went ice cold when I admitted it. And I could feel the heat of Will's stare. And I looked over and he gave me a look like, it was you, Fredo? You know what I mean? Like, it was you. You went against the family. Bro, I never lived that down. So, sidebar, yeah, yes. And now, look, I try to eat better. And I actually thank guys like Daryl Foster because they helped get me on track. But at the time, I was not hearing it. And that is crazy.
I gotta tell you, I enjoyed every second of that story. And if you're ever in a room that you want to lead with that bit. That is a fantastic bit. And what about, hey, the guy, what a good friend. I mean, it's not like Amazon was a thing. He had to go get these boxes, which finding a whole box, right, he probably did literally go to Costco. Then he's got to wrap it in some fashion. And he thought, he thought he had the system beat anyway because he knew you were trying to sneak these in. And then he's got to pay FedEx, I would imagine like $100 or so to get it to whatever tribe or village you're at. I mean, that dude's a good dude. And not for nothing, good for Daryl. I fully understand his point. Like, if we're doing this and we're living the character all the way down to this speech, he did it the right way. I got a friend. Now, I am not trying to play the one-up game. I'm just sharing. I have a friend who was on The Biggest Loser. And my friend knew a thing or two about cutting weight because he was an Olympic champion named Rulon Gardner. But I'm not going to tell you who it was. All right, listen. Rulon had a guy. And Rulon had incredible discipline. I mean, for God's sakes, the guy was an Olympic champion, but he knew that other people didn't. And Rulon had a guy that was bringing food after hours, if you will, when the cameras have gone off. And then Rulon would make friends. Hey, man, hey, you want in on some of these fries? You want in on some of these nuggets? And people are like, yeah. So Rulon's like, all right, I'll get it. I was getting myself in order. I'll just get 3 and I'll drop a couple off for you. And then Rulon wouldn't eat it. So now he's winning the game and these guys are losing and the producers don't know what to do. It turned into a lawsuit. They got rid of Rulon once they found this out. They covered the story on the network because they thought it made the show look bad, which, by the way, for my money, I think it's a great story. It ended up in a lawsuit, and I really can't tell you much more than that. I'm sure this has been resolved. It was 20 years ago, but maybe it wasn't. And maybe Rulon doesn't want it out, but I'm just sharing for you, like, a temptation is a very real thing. And when you get somewhere and you got a choice of boiled chicken or you got a lifeline that's going to send you a Snickers bar, I side with you, my friend. I'd have taken the Snickers bar.
I love that. And by the way, that is the network. See, Chael, that comes down to network television versus the new way of doing things, okay? Network television believes squeaky clean. We overproduce, right? We make the Biggest Losers very glossy and we're just showing the struggle, not wanting anything real to ever creep in. That is an old mentality. And I think so many places like Bravo, for instance, right? They make these shows where, it's full of heels, and people with the internet and seeing regular people becoming stars, I think that's what people crave. They like it. They like it to be real. And what Rulon did, first of all, I give him credit. You know what? I want to meet that guy because he did what I did. He just one-upped it. He was smart enough to go, he brought in the Snickers bars, but I should have been giving it to everybody else, right? So I'd look good. Instead, I was trying to consume them. So good for you, Rulon. Great work. But, this whole idea of being a heel or being the bad guy, I love that you talked about it, Chael, and I love that you lived it. And I got to tell you, I recently found out how that can bite you in the ass with Saturday Night's Fighter, Money Moicano. When you were doing The Ultimate Fighter, please tell the story because this guy really thought of you as the ultimate heel and was willing to do something.
I just read about that. I just read that headline. Nobody tipped me off. I was going through my little news things, and I read that Moicano was a younger guy at that point. I want to say he was a teenager, and he found out somewhere I was going to be, and I was disrespecting Brazil, so he was going to make good on the country, and he was going to buy a ticket, come to the event. He knew where I was because he read that I was commentating, and he was going to come and give me a right hand. And I really appreciated the whole thing, except for the premeditation. There was something about reading this that was it was a little bit spooky when he laid out the premeditation. And I did go do a show called The Ultimate Fighter, and I had a lot of death threats in Brazil at that time, but that just meant I was doing my job, man. I thought everybody was in on the gag. It turns out that they legitimately weren't. It turned out that not only was Moicano upset, Vanderlei Silva, who they nicknamed the Axe Murderer for good reason, was actually upset. And where it got a little bit weird is when they told me the lake they were going to put my body in, like, that was the one where I remember screenshot and sending that to Dana, like, hey, just so you know, like, I just felt like that was too much detail. And yes, when Moicano came out with that piece, he talked about Chael Sonnen was disrespecting it. You know, at that point, he didn't understand the entertainment side of it. He thought this was real. He thought he was going to be the white knight for Brazil. And even though he was a child, he was going to come in, you know, 14 years old. And it was this whole thing. And I appreciate it. And I appreciate the entertainment. And I appreciated that I impacted somebody as meaningful as Moicano. On the other side of it, it did give me a little bit of chills, to be fair with you. Yeah, when I read the detail and the premeditatedness, that did change things. It was a little spooky.
Yeah, dude. Okay, listen, first of all, hey, good on you, Moicano. Like, you're a kid, you're spirited, you love your country. We have utmost of respect for that part of it. But the premeditation factor, I don't know if you know who Travis Bickle is. Travis Bickle is a character made famous by Robert De Niro in the movie Taxi Driver. And he's just an insane person who's slowly going down the drain mentally. And he plans an assassination of the president to try to impress Jodie Foster's character. And I will tell you, Chael, he had less detail to his plan than Moicano had to his. Okay? This guy with the lake and the idea, and he knew where you were shooting and you were doing the Ultimate Fighter, that's where it becomes alarmingly real. Alarmingly real and scary.
All right. So here's the thing. I have an idea of what you just said. All I can think about is a Snickers. I can't focus on anything. You have screwed me so bad. Hey, let me throw a name at you. And I know I'm name dropping, but Todd Gardner. Okay.
Yes,
Todd is not for everybody, but Todd is an idol to me. Right. No, Todd's not it.
Me too.
I idolize him. I think that dude is the coolest guy. I think he's handsome. He walks in a room like he's everybody. I just think Todd Gardner's the coolest guy. I was doing, and I know I'm name dropping, I admit it, but I was in, Kevin James had invited me to be part of Here Comes the Boom. So Ryan Parsons was real tight with Kevin James, so they didn't just leave me behind. I got to go in the trailer and whatnot. Todd Gardner comes in this trailer, and he's eating this turkey. It's like a turkey and wrapped. It was from Arby's, and it had onions, and it had sauce, and he's eating this, and he doesn't offer anybody a bite. He's just eating this thing as he's going through a script, and he's saying where we're going to go, and he's telling the lighting where to go, and he's doing a great job of directing. And we get through the whole thing, and Kevin James just goes, I didn't hear anything you said. All I want is to eat. Why did you not bring enough for everybody? And we all laughed, and that was like 12 years, and I feel the same way. Why didn't he bring one? I don't know where that chicken sandwich, I don't know where was it turkey, was it chicken, was it egg? And now I want a Snickers. You told this whole story. I have nowhere I can go. There's a Chevron down the road from where I'm sitting right now. I've already planned it. I'm going to go and I'm going to get a lottery ticket and I'm going to get a king-size Snickers. You screwed me. You screwed me, Soccio.
I inspired you. I didn't screw you. I inspired
me. Yes.
By the way, but what happens? We're doing this show, like we're talking in 3 months and you're just getting bigger and bigger and you just get addicted to Snickers. Let's not let it go too far, Chael. Let's not let it go too far. By the way, it's funny that you mentioned Todd Garner because I've not seen Todd easily in 10 years. Now, Todd is a super producer for people who don't know. He is the best part of Hollywood, in my opinion. He is like,
I agree.
Right?
I agree.
Okay, so he reaches out to me on Instagram recently, out of nowhere. And he just says, hey, we should grab a lunch. Again, I've not seen him in 10 years. That's why it's spooky that you just brought his name up. I go sit with him in Brentwood, where he lives, which is like very old Hollywood, and I'll tell you how old Hollywood it was. I walk in the door of this restaurant. I see Todd. I sit down with him, and not 5 minutes that I'm there, an older woman comes walking up to sit at the next table. And I look up and I just kind of notice her because she stops, and Todd looks up at her and he says, Goldie. Okay, it's Goldie Hawn, right? And he says, Goldie, hey. And he goes, Todd Garner, we worked on the blah, blah, blah. And she goes, oh, yes, hi, how are you? And they're having this Hollywood conversation. Number one, I didn't get introduced. I'm sitting at the table.
Sure.
Okay, I've disappeared. I'm gone. I'm not even there in Todd's mind. Number two, I swear to you, listen, Chael, if this is like talking out of school, it is what it is. It's nothing bad, but this was the conversation. By the way, did Kurt get that flight back from Hawaii? And she goes, no, we couldn't do it, so we had to do the red eye instead. He goes, he should take the early morning flight. I just took that flight. And dialogue, this is actual dialogue. She goes, was it first class? And he goes, just like this. He goes, business. Like that. Okay? Business class. Like the worst. Like it's
he's disgusted.
Like you're with the luggage. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't fly business class. I don't know what you're talking about, bro. I'd be like, I flew business class. I'd be bragging about it. Business. She goes, oh, okay, yeah. Well, good seeing you. And she sat down and I'm like, this is Hollywood. Todd Garner is Hollywood personified. He is a super producer. There is a movie, Chael. I highly recommend you looking into it. It's called Wag the Dog.
And I know the movie. I know the movie. Yes, of course.
Dustin Hoffman's character, which was actually fashioned after Robert Evans, who ran Paramount Studios through the 70s, who's a real character, the fake tan, the teeth, the white teeth, that whole thing. He was ahead of his time, right? And he was just this this BS artist who just knew how to talk to people and everything. And I told Todd at that lunch, I said, Todd, you remind me of Dustin Hoffman's character from Wag the Dog. Why? Because Dustin Hoffman's character in Wag the Dog, anything that happened on the movie set, they would be like, okay, our main actor, we just found him mainlining with a needle in his arm. And he goes, fine, this is nothing. This is nothing. Everything was nothing to him, right? Oh, we just lost our main actor. The set just blew up. Somebody just ran somebody over on set. We're going to have an insurance nightmare. This is nothing. I got it. That's Todd. Todd is the personification of a producer. When you look it up in the dictionary, producers are supposed to go through life, and no matter what happens, he's like, we'll get through it. Don't worry. Yeah, but the script's not very good. I'll fix that. Yeah, but this isn't. That one's late. It's all good. And he is a master at doing that. I love Todd Garner.
And there's a sense too, right? When you talk about the producer, you're talking about a boss, you're talking about something, and he is a guy that comes in the room and you don't need a title and you just know, I better, what that guy says is probably the way it's going to go. You can sense that. Now, you speak about talking out of school. Since you told one, I'll jump in here. I was at a pool, and Todd does not know this, but he'll back me up on the story because he doesn't know I was there. I eavesdropped on the whole thing. 3 beautiful girls, and they're talking to Todd because they're going to be in a movie, and he just lets them talk. And they finally ask him what he does, and he answers them, and he says producer. Well, they don't believe him. Now, unlike anybody else that would have given the girl a job to impress them, Todd, to prove his status, fired all 3 of them, and you would know their names if I told you. He fired all 3 of them just because they questioned whether or not he had the power. And it was cool, man. I'm telling you, Todd Garner is a freaking cool guy, at least for me.
Yep. Dude, Todd Garner is unapologetic, right? We were talking about Vince McMahon. We talk about Dana White a lot together because we loved his nature. We love that. And call them bad in today's society, or he triggers me, or whatever words you want to use. Look, this is what people have to do. You have to mow people down sometimes. Sometimes you cannot be the good guy all the time, especially when you're producing a movie. Producing a movie, making movies, making entertainment, making the UFC, making the WWE run week after week and time after time is a bear. Most people they would wilt under the pressure, right? But these guys, they're getting 4 hours sleep a night and they're kicking ass and they're doing it and they're not worried about what people think about them. We spoke recently about this book I'm reading called Meditations, which is by Marcus Aurelius, an old Roman emperor. This is from 2,000 years ago.
Stoicness,
he's
of course.
He's the master of Stoicism, right?
Yeah.
And what the book really boils down to, and Jerry Seinfeld actually said this really great. He said that the book is all about, I mean, imagine 2,000 years ago, Chael, and it's more prevalent today. They said, in life is about not listening to all the static in your ear, all of the things and the people that tell you that you're doing something wrong. And you're worried if I say it like this, then maybe I could get in trouble. Or if I do that, maybe, they don't like me. This person left a bad comment. This did this, right? Forget all of it. And your only job is to get better at what you do every day. That to me is the best advice. And the guys that we're talking about today, they all live that. You never hear Dana White get up and say, well, the press was a little upset with me and I did this. Let me explain, guys. Let me explain. No, he doesn't have to make an explanation. I'm putting out a product, all right? I'm making an omelet and eggs get cracked, period. Todd Garner's making a movie. Eggs get cracked, Chael.
No, I have observed that, everything that you said, all the way down to what little sleep some of these real type A leaders have. And you don't get to choose that, by the way. God chooses that number, right? We all have a number, whether it's 7 hours or 5 hours. God chooses that number, and I feel like some of those guys that can go on less don't understand what a great deal they've been handed. But I do appreciate that about Dana's attitude, which is very in your face. I mean, he is overwhelmingly honest. Dana has been so honest that people have called him out and thought he's a promoter. Well, little time go by, and then see if he was being sincere or not. And he is every time, and he will openly tell you it's an organization and it's a business. And by the way, I'm signing the checks. So I'm not looking for group thought. If I want your opinion, I'll ask for it. But the rest of the time, when I come to these things, I'm going to tell you how it's going to be. I have a vision. I'm 3 years ahead. I will let you in on what that vision is. But if you challenge me, you're going to end up looking like a fool. He's told the truth every time. He's never bluffed anybody. Yeah, every single thing. I never dreamed about being a commentator or something like this. I can remember being in school, 7th and 8th grade, the very first day, they would ask you to write on the paper what you wanted to be. And I would always write President of the United States, but I would never write commentator or in MMA because it wasn't even a thing. He's the one that brought this along and set up the cameras and went $40 million in debt. And then he had guys that had the audacity to come out and say that he exploited fighters. That is so disgusting that ever got off the ground. He is the one that coined the phrase, fighters are being exploited. And then to remedy it, he changed the contracts so that you're not bound for life, so that there is ways out, so that he can have a relationship with you, but you can go somewhere else, so that you are paid a fair wage, so that you do have an escalation, so that no manager or no LLC gets a check. You get it directly. The guy that puts the gloves on, he changed the game. And 20 years go by, and they had the audacity to come out and act as though he took advantage of somebody else. I gotta tell you, it pisses me off, and he lets it go. He doesn't have to take it. He lets it go. He doesn't care because he has a job, and he's going to go do his job. And if other people are out doing theirs, including smearing him, fine, fair game, and on to the next one. It's an incredible thing to do.
Yep. Let me tell you, buddy, that's the epitome of I'm not listening to the static and I'm getting better every day. Let's talk about the Sphere, what he just put on, the biggest sporting event ever. He said he was going to do it, and I got to be honest, Chael. I go, okay, the best sporting event ever? Like, how is that? And then I watched it, and Chael, I was sitting with my buddy Tyler, and I was watching this thing, and 50 times during, I was like, did you look at that? Oh my God, look at that. Look at that. Look at that. Look at that. The guy did it. Let's talk about COVID. The fact that this guy said everybody else is shutting down. NBA, NFL, everybody's shutting down. Not us. In fact, we're going to do more fights. And I'm like, well, okay, now you're crazy. How are you possibly going to do that? Right? He did it. He built the Apex. He put the fights in the Apex Center and he brought us entertainment. All right. And he still gets criticized. I don't know Dana White. I don't work for Dana White. There's no benefit here for me. I just see what I see. And it's like, how about a thank you? You know what I mean? Like, really, truly, this guy gives me, personally, more entertainment than anybody else I can think of. And then people have a problem with the way he does it. And the press, don't even get me started on the press. The press in MMA, I mean, there's some great people in there. Obviously, there's great people now. They're affiliated with ESPN. There's some really good, reporters and whatnot. But for the most part, I mean, every time Dana sits at that press conference, the post-fight press conference, he has to literally weed through the idiotic questions. And I'm just like, what is going on here? Here's a guy that says 50,000 times, guys, I don't make fights on the night of an event, right? I don't make future fights. Inevitably, Chael, go back and watch it. Every single post-fight, somebody asks, so who do you think's next for Poirier? Do you see him fighting, Omar? It's like, so this guy is dealing with crap everywhere he turns. And what he does that I love and I admire, and I want it for my own life, right, is blinders. Just blinders. Just be better. Just get better. Just keep winning. And that's what he does. He wins in spite of the hate and in spite of all the negativity. It's really a hard thing to do, buddy. A really hard thing to do.
A street kid from Boston with no formal education at the age of 32 takes over international business, $2 million, and sends it $40 million into the hole. And he kept doing things the same way because he had a vision and nobody believed him. It was just one of these incredible things. Because you want to talk about COVID? There was no better leadership that I can point to. And I would bring Elon Musk along that ride somewhere. I remember Musk saying, if you're going to come down and arrest people, please arrest me because my employees are going to be at the factory because I'm telling them to be. And then you had Dana, who created something known as a bubble, which nobody even knew what it was. And once he put a team together and he put this and he was willing to write the check, Dana's very first statement, he comes out and tells every other organization, if you would like this, I will give it to you. You call my office, I will fax you, I will overnight you how we're going to do this. It's going to be very safe, it's going to be very expensive, but here's how it's done. He didn't get up in the loft and pull the ladder up behind him, and that was incredible leadership that nobody's ever credited him with. So he goes out and he gets something known as an island. On his very first run, Jacare Souza ends up testing positive. They never would have known. If Dana's protocols weren't put in place, they never would have known. So now they're able to isolate him. They get him a check. They get him food. They take complete care of Jacare just by example, and they still question him. They never credit him. Fast forward the tape, it turns out he was completely right, helped to bring the world back together, but because he was an unformally educated street kid from Boston once upon a time, they just couldn't do it. They just simply couldn't turn to him and say two words, good job. They just couldn't do it. And it really has been an amazing thing. And he is such a juggernaut in media. He could get himself that pat on the back. He won't do it. And I really believe the true story of Dana will not be told until he's dead. And I can share with you from firsthand, Dana did something for me one time and I thanked him. And we made one deal. And he told me, you don't tell anybody. He said to me at the time, he said, nice Dana has never served me. I have to stop right there because I made a deal. But I know two people that are alive today because of him. And he has never been thanked. And it's really not something he's looking out to do. He had a vision. He did it his way. That's that. He played the sphere. I have no idea why. He did not need that. He's got a skill that probably 3 other men alive have. And he's got a team like that. He's got a guy named Craig Broussard. There's probably 3 people alive.
Yep.
Amazing.
Brilliant.
But also doesn't sleep at night, follows a strict diet, exercises like a maniac, never isn't reading and learning and forming better teams. It's a really interesting thing what he has. It really is. One hell of a ticket that I don't think could be beat was Donald Trump and Dana White. And there's not anybody that Dana would be a vice to, except maybe him. And maybe him just out of respect to the country. And I really think that ticket could have beaten anybody because you can't stick anything on him. Bring it on. Anything you want to throw at him, go ahead. Fair game. And he will still beat you. There will be blood all over the rooms when Dana gets up and walks out.
It's funny that you mentioned that because Dana, I don't know if you saw it recently, but Dana talked about, and I'm always fascinated by mindset of people, right? Even like, I don't care if I'm a fan or if it's politically correct. I just like people, men and women, that do it, that make something happen despite their circumstances, that rise up, like you said, a poor kid from Boston with Dana. And Dana spoke about Trump in that, Trump goes to a lot of the events, right? He's a big hit there. I believe it was the Strickland fight. And Dana told the story that the night before, Trump texted him at 1 or 2 a.m. saying, hey, buddy, I'm going to be coming in tomorrow for the fight. I'm going to arrive at this time. Really excited about this fight. I see this as this fight. At 1 in the morning, okay? 1 in the morning. The next day at 8 a.m., he got a text again saying, I just landed. I got to go speak in Virginia, okay? And I'm probably getting the locations wrong, so forgive me. But the gist of the story is I got to go speak in Virginia, wherever it was. And then I got a quick press conference, and then I'm going to fly over and come to the fight. Does all of that, arrives at the fight, finishes the fight finish at 1 a.m. or whatever it was. He gets in his motorcade or whatever he gets into, and he's talking still about the fights to Dana 24 hours later he goes, I don't know when the guy slept. And then the next morning at like 7 a.m., he's texting Dana again going, I was thinking about that one fight. I mean, guys, listen, I'm not built that way. I want to be built that way, but I'm like, it's 11 p.m. I'm going nighty night. You know what I mean? Mike needs his beauty sleep, or else I'm a crap. You know what I mean? It's terrible. Like, I can admit, I know my limitations, but I also know when I see somebody who's willing to do it. Will Smith is a guy that is putting in the work. Chael, he is the guy that when you think you're done working and you put in, that moment when you get up and you go, oh, that was a good day. Boy, we got a lot done. All right, so what's up for tomorrow? That's when he's getting started. That's when Will is getting started. He's been doing this for 35 years, going all the way dating back to Fresh Prince. Because you got to remember, here's a guy, Chael, who didn't know how to act. And I'm not talking crap about him. It's fact. He said it. He was repeating the other actor's lines in the beginning. He memorized the whole script. I don't know if you know that. There's tape on it. You have to see it. It's really compelling. He's speaking. So he would say, Uncle Phil, what are you doing? And if Uncle Phil's line was, I'm going to the store, he would go, Will was saying his lines. Had no idea how to act. He admits, I'm not a gifted actor. He studies harder, Chael. He works harder. And he knows, he has that mentality. If I'm up at 5 a.m, I'm doing road work, to put it in boxing terms or MMA terms. And the other guy isn't, I'm already winning. Will is the hardest working person in the world. We look at Dana, we look at McMahon, we look at Trump, we look at Will. We look at that mentality and it wins and it works every single time. It's just how many people have it in them to really commit to it. And especially when things are going well, you got to stay with it. You got to stay the course. That's the difficult part.
You want to know something? I hope he has a list, because the fact that nobody came out and defended him after one moment of whether it was frustration or he was trying to work in entertainment, or I would have appreciated if Chris Rock himself would have come out and said, hey, by the way, I insulted the man's wife with the man there. I had a little something coming. He didn't hurt him, and that's not a nice thing to do. And I've been attacked on camera before. It can even be a frightening thing to do. But you're telling me that one of these people, after all these years, nobody came up and spoke and tried to defend Will? I don't know, man. I was a little irritated by that. There was plenty of other people that saw a little bit of chivalry within that. There was plenty of other people, such as the neighborhood that I'm in, that thought he held back and thought that because Rock handled it like a gentleman, that they both put their swords down and walked away. But it wasn't a thing where you're going to go ruin a guy's career and you're never going to say anything good about him. I was actually very disappointed that nobody spoke up on his behalf.
Yeah, I think it speaks to people's like, they love you when they love you and they hate you when they hate you, wherever the wind is blowing, I think people go. And that was a really unfortunate circumstance, of course. And I like both guys. I mean, obviously I love Will, and Chris Rock did it. He did that same show. We were talking about Kevin Can Wait, and he was such a gentleman, and he's one of the funniest people that ever lives. It's just an unfortunate situation. Had it happened in a different place though, Chael, I wonder, like, let's say that happened backstage, right? Let's say that happened backstage where someone caught it on an iPhone, right? And it was just like post-Oscars brawl, okay? A slap is thrown. There wouldn't have been the impact that this was because of the pomp and circumstance of the moment. And I think people were like, we're all in tuxes and everybody's in the room, and it was alarming. And I think that's what makes it stay with them longer, and they have more of an opinion about it. But had it happened backstage, it just would have been fodder. It just would have been fun things to talk about and dirt. It would have been dirt. I don't think anybody would have been quote unquote canceled or whatever. I think it would have been a much different situation. But yeah, nobody really did come to his rescue. And I think you're right. I think that wasn't the popular opinion.
I mean, Sasha, I got to tell you, he was a real man about it. I mean, he never made an excuse. He offered an apology, and that was it. He didn't ask other people to defend him. And the only reason I tell you that is he could have. He could have said, hey, now wait just a second. You all got fooled, and he and I had that worked out. And if you look closely, I've got an open. I walk up to him, and I take a puff as I move my chair. He could have acted like that was a script. And Rock would have come out and go, no, it was. Oh, my God, I didn't know he was going to do that. Will could have gone, wait a minute, the producer didn't tell you because he told, wait a minute, you didn't know that was. They could have done so many different things, but instead, he handled it like a man. And it was a wrong thing to do. And to come out and strike somebody or to lash out because you're angry in a moment, it was the wrong thing to do. But that's also how he handled it. He said as much, and he said, I apologize, and he said, I regret it. I mean, I'm just sharing. It was not equitable. What he did, not to mention it was retaliatory, what he did as a counterpuncher versus the punishment that he suffered was not equitable. It was greatly lopsided against a guy who appears to be one of the good guys of the industry.
He appears and is. Chael, all I can say is, and I don't want to be the guy that's just riding the fence here, but really, truly, I can tell you this. I've been around Chris Rock a few times, and he's beyond a gentleman. And I think even the words he spoke after the incident just prove that. He is a good guy. He is a good man. Will, yes, there was that night and frustration or whatever you want to call it. I'm not inside Will's head. I don't know. Okay. But I can tell you this. I met Will in 1990. All right. And it was the pilot taping of The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. And I let him know I was a writer. I was friends with Alfonso, who played Carlton on the show. And Will knew I was a writer. And I started coming to every taping. And I'll tell another long story very short. But I went to every taping of The Fresh Prince in the hopes of one day being a writer on the show. And Will knew, and he was he wanted to make sure I was going to stand the test of time. So it took like a season and a half or 2 seasons of me showing up every Friday night with my script, and my script would be dog-eared, okay? Because I had written alternative jokes for Will and other characters, hoping that somebody would ask me for them. But nobody ever asked me. And one night, we're taping the show. We used to shoot in front of a live audience on that show. Quincy Jones was in the front row all the time. He was one of our producers. And he was there that night. And I'm standing there with my script dog-eared, expecting nothing to happen. And Will says a joke on camera. And it doesn't land as well as it should. And he comes walking up to me after they yell cut. And he says, yo, you write stuff, right? You're Alf's buddy. What do you got for that? You got something for that? I went, hold on a second. Yeah, I do. And I gave him the line, right, Chael? He goes, all right, cool. Goes towards set because they're ready to do another take. Comes back and says, give me how you say your last name again. What is it? I go, it's Soccio, Mike Soccio. He goes, Mike Soccio. Okay, because if this joke tanks, I'm going to tell the audience it was you. And he walks out to the set, and I'm waiting for the new line, and it was such an inappropriate line. I'll never forget the joke was, he goes, I went out with a woman. This is on the show, so, it's not a secret. He goes, I went out with a woman. She had no arms, and she clapped like this, and he does his shoulders, right? And that was the first joke that tanked. And I said, at the time, Arsenio Hall was so big, I said, what if you say I went out with a woman, no arms, and I took her to Arsenio, and she was like, oof, 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 because they used to do the dog pound, right? Old joke. The young people are not going to get that one nonetheless. So that's the new line. Will goes out onto set, and he says the new line, and it gets a huge laugh. And Chael, it's the most impactful moment of my life by a million miles. And I'm sitting there, and then Will does something else. They're like, cut, we're moving on. And he says, no, hold on a second. Guys. So we have a team of writers here. And that line you just heard, we change things in the moment. We use alternative lines, but that one was not written by our staff. That one was written by a new guy that comes here every week and wants a job. And his name is, what is it again? And I go, Mike Soccio. He goes, Mike Soccio, come out here.
Wow.
And I walked out, okay? And I looked into the audience, Chael, and I'd never been on that side before. I'm always in the dark side, right? That's the bright side where the lights are.
Of course.
On a sitcom set, there's the proscenium, right? You play to the proscenium. And I was like stunned, and I looked up and everybody was clapping, including the GOAT, Quincy Jones. And it was my moment. And I couldn't believe that he had been so kind as to do that for me.
I actually can't either. That is beautiful.
I can't either. And to make it even more beautiful, I left that night expecting him to come up to me and go, so you're writing on the show now, right? And I was going to be like, yeah, I'll take a job. How much a week? Me and Mr. Cool. Nothing happened. Chael, he left. I was leaving by myself. I waited till the very end and nobody said anything to me. And I was like, oh. So I start walking out and I see a woman putting tubs of wardrobe into her car. And I said, can I help you? And she goes, oh, finally someone stops to help. And if I had not stopped, this not would have happened. I'm helping her with these things. And I hear a voice behind me. And he goes, now that's a gentleman. And I turned around and it's Will in his teal green Mercedes. And he says, yo, where you working right now, bro? And I go, well, I was a PA for the People's Court, but I'm no longer working. I'm just looking for work. And he goes, no, you're working on the show now. You're a writer. Show up Monday morning. And that is Will Smith to me.
That's as gangster a move as I have ever heard, by the way. I'm really glad that happened to you. And when you meet people that are the big star and they're not afraid to share credit, it is rare because they do want the credit. Right. I mean, a lot of people, there's a reason that Elvis was on stage in the blue jumpsuit, but you really never know who wrote Blue Suede Shoes. But I just share for you. I like guys like that. I admire that when you can tell someone we work together as a team effort. He gave me the line and I'm the one that delivered it and you all laughed and these guys tuned in and thank you all and we'll see you next week. There's an honor to that, but I didn't know that is how you and Will met. And I must tell you, I've only got to meet Will once in my life is because we got seated together. And I brought you up as I was trying to break it. Does he know who I am? As I was trying to, I said, hey, I met a guy, Mike Soccio, or I said, Mike, I met a guy that you've referred to as the greatest pitch man in all of Hollywood. He goes, Soccio, you know Soccio? And I'm like, yes. And I said, yes, I do. And then the ice was broken, right? He introduced me to the family and we sat and once Ronda Rousey had taken on Sarah McMahon. And at any rate, I pulled old Soccio's name out of the hat and met Will Smith because of it. So there you go.
I love that. Yeah, we'd spent a long time, 35 years, and I say it to say that time tells you everything about somebody, right? Like, what do they say? Familiarity breeds contempt, yeah? It's like 35 years of knowing this man, and he's the same guy that gave me that job that night. The kindness of that man is still there. And that is not to say that Chris Rock is any different or anybody else, but that's just my experience, and it's what I see, and it's what I say, It's how I feel. Yeah. And he's a big UFC fan. Actually, in the early days, he would have these dogs. Jay Leno gave him a bunch of Rottweilers, and every one of them was named after UFC fighters. Gracie, Shamrock, Tyson.
Really?
A fighter. Yes. In his old house. He and I used to watch the OG UFC. We loved Tank Abbott, Steve Jenham, all those old fighters.
Steve Jenham, yes, of course. He won the champion, Steve Jenham.
I know. He won. He was a cop, I think.
He was. He was a cop.
Yeah. Now the modern day would be like a Benoit Saint Denis, right? And then pro cop in the middle. But looking at Benoit, who's fighting soon, actually, against your guy, your Travis Bickle. He's fighting against Moicano.
I think Tank Abbott tried to throw Steve Jenham out of the octagon one time. Was that who? Remember when Tank tried to throw a guy out and Big John had to stay? I think that was Jenham, by the way.
That was Jenham because he was a bit smaller Jenham, and he could prove his strength. There's a real interesting character, boy, that Tank Abbott. He's one of a kind.
Can I ask you a question? Can I ask you the forbidden topic of Hollywood right now?
Please.
What's up with P. Diddy? Is this stuff real? Was this stuff known? Was it is this the thing? When Matt Lauer went down, everybody on the inside is like, well, yeah, we all knew it, but that's Matt. And there is something to be said for that. Like there is things where times change and rules change, but until somebody really splashes you in the face with it. Cat Williams was calling this stuff out a long time ago, and everybody laughed and thought it was a joke. And there was another guy that was under oath, and he's floating around YouTube, and he was using it as a defense. I want to say maybe it's a bodyguard or something. But he was telling this to the police under oath, and nobody believed it. And it was a period of time ago. I mean, what is going on with Diddy? Is this guy getting out? Is this guy the next Weinstein? What do you think about this? And was it called a freak fest?
Yeah, Freak Fest and his white party and all that. I met P. Diddy once, which is odd because, he's here. You usually see a guy at parties or around, but I only met him once. And it was a very long time ago through a guy named Benny Medina, who was one of the creators of Fresh Prince and a big music guy. And I remember thinking when I met him, he was a little arrogant, quite frankly. And I just didn't necessarily think he was very friendly. And I tried to talk to him and it just didn't work out. And I just chalked it up to whatever. Throughout the years, I would hear rumblings of oh man, because you always thought like the P. Diddy party, I would kill to go to one of those. And I would hear some people in the know that would tell me, nah, it's kind of dark, bro. It's kind of freaky. Like he's not a good guy. And I never really thought much about it. And now that it's all coming out, you have the people like Cat Williams, this guy Orlando, he's an actor. I don't remember his last name. And now he has a podcast. He's been talking about it. Usher was apparently brought into that world at a very early age. In fact, and so was Justin Bieber, and subjected to party things that no kids should be subjected to, apparently, allegedly. Yep. But I'm a believer, Chael, that where there's smoke, there's fire. And when there's enough about somebody like a Weinstein, like a Diddy, I think it's absolutely something is going on. And it's just, look, we saw the guy physically abuse that poor woman in the hotel. He grabs her by the hair and drags her.
Oh.
I mean, what are you doing, bro? That tells me everything I need to know. It's like, if someone's getting dragged in my marriage, it's me getting dragged. You know what I mean? My wife is the one kicking my butt. And but to see him do that, just, it says everything about him. I don't like him very much. I don't like what I'm hearing. And I really think it's going to be uglier than we can all imagine. I think it's going to go deeper and deeper. And I think many people are going to be implicated. Many famous people will be implicated in the next 6 months as this information starts to roll out. And Chael, I think we're seeing the tip of the iceberg here.
No, it sounds like it. I mean, it's starting to sound like the things that we heard were true and we dismissed, or someone is trying to get themselves out of trouble and they bring in somebody like they're all starting to pan out. You do wonder how far that's going to go. I got to tell you, purely for conversation, I'm a very forbidden topic right now, but there is something to be said for disclosure. Like, just hear me out.
Yep.
If Diddy is doing some really weird things, but you have to advertise that. Like, if you're a weirdo, you must advertise it to meet other weirdos. And if you're throwing parties and these people are trying to come and they've heard about it and they've got a good idea of what's going on, I only share for you, like, whatever he's doing, if it does go back a period of time, I will be interested in ages. I will be interested in who was of consenting age, heard about this, and did everything they could do to get an invite. Versus who got taken advantage of. I mean, even J. Edgar Hoover, who founded the FBI, did it on blackmail. He planted the cameras. He knew who was who. He waited till they became senators or congressmen. I mean, these are very well documented things. They argue that's what Epstein did to get his powers, that he had videos, whether that's accurate or not. And now they're arguing that Diddy did the same thing, and whether he was a freak or he was leveraging people or it was both or something in between. It is the hottest drama out there, and I got to tell you, I enjoy the whole thing until I read about the minor. That changes things. If they did that to Bieber or they did it to any kid that was under 18, man, the rules are completely different.
Yeah, it turns into a whole other thing, right? You look at, Weinstein is terrible. I mean, it's absolutely terrible. Matt Lauer, whatever, but there was adults, right? It was adults. And I'm not saying it's, it's good. Clearly it's not. But like when kids are involved, it's a whole other level of depravity. And this guy, it just makes me sick. And, I really do hope that if there were kids involved, and it looks like there was, I mean, even some famous people, like I said, I think people were brought in at least to witness certain things, right? Cat Williams in his stand-up talks about going to a Diddy party and walking down the hallway and he goes, you don't want to look in the wrong room. You know what I mean? You're going to see something that's going to shock you. And the way he did it was very funny because he stops and he goes, is that two dudes kissing? Is that this? Is that this? Is that, what am I looking at? Is what's happening here? Is that guy doing this to this person? What is, and, but it's like with kids, all bets are off. You're automatically just like, you put them away forever. And I got to tell you, I think what you're saying about like making sure that you protect yourself with NDAs and all those things, it's sort of anybody that has massive power, like they talk about Scientology, right? The Church of Scientology gets dirt on you in order to protect themselves, right? It's what they do. They tell you, you're not digging deep enough. Tell us more. What happened to you when you were a kid? Tell us the truth. What's the worst thing you've ever done? That is the basis for their work, Chael. they get dirt on you. So you can never say they did something because well, crap, this stuff's going to come out, right? So they get, and Diddy's got cameras. I mean, this stuff has got to be well documented. I think the amount of witnesses that were at these parties are going to be staggering. And I think there's going to be a lot of finger pointing. And I think it's going to get really dramatic real quick. I don't think we've seen anything yet, bro. Nothing.
Yeah, I fully agree with you. And you do wonder how high it goes. Like, is this just pertain to media people who went on to become entertainers or A-level celebs or even media moguls? Or does it spill over, like Epstein, to people that are sitting in positions of power right now, that have the power of the pen, that have the power to influence juries or get to judges? I mean, that was the real problem with Epstein. Like, those things could not come out if they were so. You could not get before a jury. So it had to go another route. And I'm just sharing, like, Diddy does appear, whether it's ignorance or arrogance, he does appear to be rather confident in his position that he's not going to be having a long stay in Crossbar County. And I do think that that's one interesting thing. I mean, he was out flamboyant and showing himself about New York when they went and picked him up. Like, he does at least believe that he's got something on. It does appear that way. I wouldn't know. I'm just an outside observer, but it's very interesting, man. It's a very interesting time because all of these things that we believed were smut, they're now coming out. And by the way, you mentioned Cat Williams. When did he turn out to be so funny? I mean, you want to talk about a guy that did more for his own career in one interview. Oh my goodness, that guy's hilarious. I didn't know it. I did not know he was that funny till he came out with Shannon Sharp.
Right. Same. I was always like, Cat Williams, yeah, I don't know if he's really 100% my style. I like comedians. I didn't know that I loved him. And when any clip I watch of Cat Williams, love him or hate him, he is compelling and he is giving it raw. He does not care who he offends.
That's the thing. The greatest humor has a level of truth to it. I didn't know there was truth to Cat. I didn't know that. So now going back and watching his old, yet knowing that he's up there telling the truth, whether you're laughing or not.
Yep.
Compelling. I love that you use that word because that's the right word. It is so compelling now that we know that he really does know and he really wasn't joking, at least not all the time.
Yep, there was truth there and there was slip-ups. If you start seeing now on Instagram, lots of clips of just people saying like, I want to say somebody was in an interview in the Breakfast Club or whatever the radio show was, and somebody, like Diddy said something. Snoop was there. I know this. Diddy was there, Snoop was there, and somebody else. Oh, I think it was Usher, actually. And like Diddy was saying some things, and Usher was like, yeah, man, well, your parties are a whole other thing. I don't even want to talk about that. Like little comments now that seem benign in the moment, now are really having some weight to them. And I'm in for all of it. I'm seated in front of my TV. In front of my computer. Let's go. I can't wait for them to make the biopic. Who's going to play Diddy?
Yeah, who's going to want that job? I hear you.
Job, exactly.
Who's going to play Diddy?
Oh, my goodness.
Sure.
What's your thoughts on Pereira Roundtree? Like, on Pereira in general, what an enigmatic, amazing guy that's been in the UFC for such a short amount of time. And what he's been able to do, I'm fascinated by this guy. And most recently, I'm really fascinated that I don't know if you saw this, but he's fighting this guy, Khalil Roundtree, and Sean Strickland, right, gets on board with Pereira, and it's like, I'll come train with you, and starts talking smack about Khalil Roundtree, and that Khalil Roundtree's a super emotional guy, and they've trained together, and he's like, I always told the guys in the gym, take it easy on Khalil, he's a little bit of a bitch, right? Already getting in Khalil's head, and I'm like, I don't know if this was by design, and if it was, Pereira, you're a genius for doing this. But like I always say, if you want to start a fight with somebody and you don't necessarily have the tools, because Pereira doesn't want to be the bad guy maybe in that situation, just go get Sean Strickland. Ring Sean Strickland's doorbell and you will have a fight. You know what I mean? And you're like, this is the person I want to attack. He's like, I'm in. Let's go. And he's so good at it. Sean Strickland is just the GOAT at getting under people's skin. He is amazing. And I think I always think Khalil Roundtree's got all the tools to beat a guy like Pereira, believe it or not. He's really, really good. But you get emotionally involved, it's like, Chael, I'll tell you, I watch these fights and I look at the weigh-ins. That's my big thing. When I predict a fight or I'm going to bet on a fight, I always look at the weigh-ins because it goes back to the time when Ronda Rousey was going to fight Holly Holm. And I was in my living room, my old place. I'll never forget it. And she was going, I'm going to get, and I'm going to get. And Ronda Rousey was just screaming at the top of her lungs at Holly Holm. And Holly Holm was super calm. I went in the room. I said to my wife, I go, I'm going to tell you something. I think Ronda Rousey's going to lose that fight. And she said, Ronda Rousey, doesn't she win every fight in like the first round? I go, yeah. But I go, she's just something about her emotions. tell me that she's not going to win this fight. And I go, I'm going to put like a lot of money on this. Chael, I never pulled the trigger and I regretted it. I never pulled the trigger and I regretted it. So I think just from a fighter's perspective, Chael, tell me, getting in someone's head, obviously you're a master at that, but being emotional, how much can that help you, hurt you? It's gotta have a strong impact on you one way or another.
Sure. And you want to know why? And people will always talk about who's got the pressure. I always hear sports guys saying that in every sport, but they never explain to the audience why it matters. And just to answer your question, it creates a fatigue. If you have the pressure or you have an anxiety or you have any type of emotion, excitement and fear is actually the same chemical in your brain that gets released, and that adrenaline. But then you get to decide, are you excited or are you scared? And there's whole books written on that, and some prick that's trying to sell one on confidence for $9.95 on Amazon. I just tell you that it can tire you out. It can, and when you're in something like a fist fight, where when you reach fatigue, skills are gone. It is now a tough guy contest, and it does not matter how hard you train or what lifestyle you live. At some point, DNA is going to kick in. Your lungs are either bigger or smaller and maximized more or less than your opponent's. And there is nothing about Pereira that should be. For example, at 36 years old, he should not be winning world championships. Coming into a sport at 34-year-old, he should not be able to win championships in multiple divisions.
Yep.
A kickboxer with less than a dozen fights, including amateur ones, should not be in a conversation for GOAT or as a guy that many believe is going to replace Jon Jones. Those things just shouldn't happen. He should not be the leader of our locker room. He should not be the sport's second biggest draw behind only Sean O'Malley. He should not be the main event at UFC 300. He should not have the most lucrative contract in UFC history when you're including pay-per-view points and buy rates outside of Brock Lesnar. But he is. And I just share those things with you. Like, how did the guys of this era come in and let a kickboxer take over? How did they let a kickboxer with less than a dozen fights have the main event spot of UFC 300 that at least in theory is supposed to be the biggest show ever went down? How did they let a kickboxer come in who can't even decide on what weight class? He's an 85-pounder who's got the belt at 205 that wants to fight at heavyweight. How do you let him main event international fight weekend? I don't know how these things happen. This is the sport full of fake tough guys. And it turns out Pereira is legit. It turns out he's an actual badass. And when everybody's a gangster until a gangster walks in the room. And it turns out Pereira is actually the tough guy. Even though he didn't have the sport and he doesn't have a black belt in anything and he's never had a wrestling match and never entered Abu Dhabi, it turns out he's tougher than all of them. And I would not have predicted that for a 36-year-old that came over from a sport like Muay Thai. Good on Pereira.
Good on Pereira's right. And it's 36. Like right there, that's a strike against you. On paper, nothing makes sense. Chael, if you said this guy's had an amazing, illustrious kickboxing career and he's beaten Adesanya twice, I'd be like, oh, that's amazing. But he gets smoked in MMA, right? Because he's going to get taken down. He's going to get taken down. He's going to get control. He's going to get submitted. He's going to get whatever. And he finds a way. And I think a lot of it has to do with his mystique and his persona. I talk about that a lot, right? It's the flip side of the coin, Chael, of being nervous at that weigh-in and over screaming. It's quite frankly, it's Conor when he fought Khabib, right? He was doing too much. Maybe somewhere deep down inside thought this guy just has a skill set better than me. I don't know. But the point is, like, Pereira shows up and just elevates the fear factor, everything. Look at Pereira when he's not in fight camp. When he's in fight camp and he's not ready, like a week away from the fight, his hair grows out to about my length, right? And he looks like an Amazon driver that could kick your ass, okay? But he doesn't look like he doesn't look like the baddest guy in the world, right? Conversely, you get a guy like Sean O'Malley with all the hair and that adds to his mystique. You cut him down, he's going to look like your accountant, right? So it does matter what you present on the night. And what these guys are presenting at that weigh-in and what he presents the night of the fight is shaved head, tribal makeup, the whole garb, and then he comes out and he does that thing, right? And I don't care who you are. Ankalaev, the only one who may not be flustered, that will be remain to be seen. But looking over at him, it's like, I got to fight him. I mean, it works in his favor, this mystique that he has, because nothing else makes sense. You're 36. You only know kickboxing. You're not the biggest guy in the world. He's big, but he's not massive. He has nothing going for him on paper that should be, like you said, none of this should be happening. So what do we attribute it to? This. I have to attribute it to this. his ability to walk through the fire, not care, not look at any of those things. I'll bet if you asked him about those things, he would say, I don't even think about them. It doesn't even register. I would hope that he would say that because in my mind, that's who that guy is. It's like what we've been talking about all day, right? That ability to not hear the static and just keep going forward. That's Alex Pereira. He's amazing, but he'll be 40 in 4 years. So he's got less runway in front of him. Yeah. That's a factor.
No, I think that's so interesting. I mean, the fine line between genius and insanity. And when you're dealing with an artist like this, that's the top of his craft, clearly he's a genius, but I agree with you. I don't think that it's deeply thought out. I don't think his book would have a whole bunch of chapters to it. I bet you it's something really simple. I would love to ask him. I would love to talk to Jon Jones about him. Like to get Jon, hey, Jon, put the guard down. Just tell me what you see here. Tell me how this guy is a problem in his length and his lack of experience. You know, to get one of those fellow geniuses in the sport and just know what he's talking about. I got to meet a guy one time. His name is John Smith. He's the greatest amateur wrestler to ever exist. 6 world championships, 2 Olympic games, all in a row. But I got to meet him this one time, and I'm sitting right across from him. It was right before I was going to fight Jon Jones. I had just signed the contract. And John Smith doesn't know that, and he doesn't really follow our sport, even though he was Daniel Cormier and Johnny Hendricks' coach. It's just not what he does. And so I just want to ask him, what is it like when you're the lamb going into slaughter? That's basically what I want to get down to, because when he was a kid, to make an Olympic team, he had to beat the defending Olympic champion, who, by the way, just to get the spot, beat his older brother, who happens to be in his corner. Like John Smith's idol and cornerman lost to the guy he's got to go beat 2 out of 3 times. And I set this whole stage up so people around know what I'm talking about. And I'm going to get my big answer. I waited 20-some years to meet this guy, ask him this question. He's putting a chew in at a time, and he says, well, Chael, he says, you got to understand, in 1988, I had decided I was going to be the Olympic champion.
Wow.
And that was it.
He
had decided that it had nothing to do with that guy beat my brother, or my family's been to court, or he's the gold medalist, or I'm still in college and has never been done. It had nothing to do with it. He had decided that he was going to be Olympic champion.
Brother.
And I just check, please. I can get up and go now. Yeah, that's
done.
It.
You're done.
But these greats, though, right? These greats,
yes.
They think differently, and it's not always more complex. Sometimes it's more basic, and I just say that because I think that Pereira is probably the more basic.
Bro, I love that answer that he gave, and I got to tell you, if you know anything about the laws of self-assumption, which, is like, positive self-talk and all of these things that are like sort of the buzzwords of today, but they've been around for a very, very long time. The story we tell ourselves is the story that exists and becomes our 3D world, right? And one of the techniques of that is simply saying, I've decided that this is going to happen. I've decided that I'm going to make more money at my job. I've decided that this is who I am. So it's really interesting that he used that language. I don't know if he was thinking of self-assumption, or maybe some people just have it intrinsically and it comes naturally to them, right? But like, it's such a beautiful answer that you don't even want John Smith, the great John Smith, to say another word. I love that you said check, please, because you're like, let me get out of this conversation because it can never get better than this. This is it. I have a very similar story. I met Quentin Tarantino, and as a writer, look, I don't care. You can say what you want. People can say what they want about what. Quentin Tarantino is the GOAT. Quentin Tarantino is Jon Jones, all right? He is the GOAT at what he does, Chael. He's so good, and it's not just because of Pulp Fiction. It's because of the way he sees the world, the way he presents characters, the way he presents story. He breaks the rules, yet creates a new set of rules for himself, and he does it all organically. He's beyond brilliant. I could not say enough good things about this man. I met him a very long time ago through Will Smith, actually. I was very fortunate. Quentin was on his way to Will's house to interview Will's wife, Jada. And this is back in the 90s, late 90s. And I'll never forget it. And Will's very casual about everything. So I pulled up and I'm like, yeah, we're going to hit the course. And he goes, no, your guy's coming. Your boy's coming today. And I go, my boy? What? He goes, Tarantino. I go, Quentin Tarantino? He goes, no, Rob Tarantino. Yes, Quentin Tarantino. Of course it's Quentin Tarantino. Right? And I was like, wait a minute, he's coming here? He's going to be here. He goes, yeah, dude, he's going to be here at like 11 o'clock. He'll be here any minute. And Chael, everything in my body froze up. And I'm not a starstruck guy. Actors, it's like whatever. But a writer like Quentin Tarantino, that's another story. I geeked out. He comes in, and I said to him, he goes, Will's like, Mike's a big fan. He's really nervous. We got to go play golf. Ask him what you want to ask him. Okay? And I'm on the spot, and I'm sitting there, and Quentin goes, yeah, man, no problem. What's up? Yeah, all right. Hey, Mike, hey. And I'm like looking at him, and I go, I'm a writer. And I get stuck. I get stuck when I'm writing sometimes. And, I just don't know if I'm writing anything good or bad, or I just don't know if it's any good and I don't know what to do. And sometimes I just quit and can you help me with that? And he goes, yeah, yeah, yeah. He goes, here's what you do. He goes, you go outside, you go for a walk, okay? And your legs are going to get really tired. And if it starts raining, you stay outside. I don't care how tired you are. I don't care how much rain is hitting you. Don't bring an umbrella, okay? Don't take a certain path. Just keep going. And don't come back until you've figured out the problem that you're trying to solve. He goes, you'll get so tired and you'll want to go home so badly, you'll figure it out. I went, good night, everybody. I do that to this day, Chael. It's how I conduct business to this day. If I have a problem with anything that I'm working on creatively, I go for a walk and I will not stop. I will not do anything else. I will not look at text. I will not look at Instagram. I have to finish it. And ultimately, I always find a way. So the greats just have a way of doing, and it just slipped out of him. And it was this beautiful advice, something he had never thought about. You get the feeling he never even told anybody else about it. He was thinking about it in the moment. And I love that. I love greatness in any capacity. And I love wisdom.
I love that story, and I have loved talking to you, and I am 99.9% sure that Ryan has captured this, but I feel like, so we don't reach, right, because I really want you to come back tomorrow or the next day. Should we call it here and make sure that we have this? Can I tell you something, by the way, on a personal level? There's nothing that makes me more lackadaisical, and I have had sleep issues my entire life, like having to get prescriptions or taking NyQuil. Like, I have sleep issues because I like nighttime. That's just when I'm my most alert. But to share with you, nothing makes me more lackadaisical than having to go into a competition. Like before a wrestling match, all I would want is to take a nap. Or people would think that's interesting, where a lot of fighters will be in the locker room and they'll bring their pillow. Like, it's actually very common as you're trying to calm your body. Sometimes you'll yawn and do certain things like this. But one thing that I did do with myself is, if I would look at the clock and let's say it's like 1:45 in the morning, I would tell myself, if you're up at 2 a.m., you got to go run 5 miles. And I would do it every time with discipline. And in my entire career of 22 years, I only had to do that once. It would put me to sleep. And I only bring that up just 'cause it's kind of like Tarantino's story. Like, you stay out there and you keep walking. The deal with you get to come. If lightning strike, you get into. I get it. I actually get it. Like, yeah, you're going to come up with an idea that you like when the house is on fire. I love that.
I love it. And I love your sleep story, because I have problems with sleeping too, especially the day before something exciting. Like if we have an early shoot or something, and my mind goes and goes and goes. I got the Ambien, I got this and that, like you said, the NyQuil. But those techniques, I'm going to use that technique, and I'm going to say, I got to do push-ups. And I got to get out of bed and do push-ups, and I got to do 50 of them. If I'm awake at this time, it's 50. If I'm awake at that time, it's 100. And I'm going to use it. I'm stealing it, Chael. I love it.
Absolutely.
I love it.
Yep. As long as you're honest with yourself, as long as you'll actually do it, I do maintain for you that it'll work.
Beautiful, brother. This has been great, man. This has been fun. We'll talk soon.
So you're awesome, buddy. I really hope to talk to you again soon. By the way, are you comfortable with predictions? I would like to know who you think's going to win between Saint Denis and Moicano. Like that's a really hard fight. I'm not sure the UFC knows what a difficult match that is, because their star power is different. And 5 rounds in there with a guy that used to jump out of airplanes in Saint Denis and shoot machine guns at people. That's a long night out.
To me, this is an easy one. And I usually don't say that, because I think the way the UFC is structured now, different from, say, 5-6 years ago and more, where there would be uneven matchups, quite frankly, in the UFC, right? I mean, you would go, this is not even a competition. I think with this new wave of fighters, they're good at everywhere, right? Because they were raised on MMA. They were not raised in one discipline or another, right? So you get these tighter matches. I don't think this one is as tight as others. I feel that Saint Denis showed something in that Poirier fight. And what he showed was he was really beating Poirier up. And I'm the biggest Poirier fan. This is not a slight against Poirier, but he was beating him up. He was having his way with him in a way that made me, as a fight fan, look at him and go, okay, we're looking at something different here. This guy is a beast. This guy is fearless, almost too fearless. I mean, hands down, just throwing and popping and moving him around. Now, look, big fight experience kicked in that. And Poirier was smart, and he weathered the storm, and cardio was an issue, and all that. And I think if Saint Denis had more fight experience, that wouldn't have gone that way. Okay. And if it was a longer fight, if it was a shorter fight, it wouldn't have gone that way. I think Saint Denis is the future. Now, his mentality is right. He's a badass. I mean, he's special forces, France special forces. I think he's much better than most people are even giving him credit for it. I think even the betting line is a little off. I love Moicano. I love his resilience. I love that he'll travel somewhere with a plan to to sucker punch Chael Sonnen. All that's great. It all works in his favor, Chael. Okay. But I don't think he's going to do what he needs to do against. And I think it's going to be a very short night. And I think I think Saint Denis gets it done. I'm going to predict round 2. I think it's going to be a quick one. It's my take.
That's an excellent analysis. We'll put a pin in that and see. Because I also think that Saint Denis is better. Like, people only remember him losing to Poirier. You're completely right, though. It was 3 rounds in. He had won them all. I mean, Poirier was looking right. Poirier had to really find that dog in him. You're right. Saint Denis is better than, if you just look at his record, might lead you to believe.
Yep. So we'll see what happens. We'll talk about that. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it. And either way, it's a great fight because they're both really, really good. And I'm not looking past Moicano. He's very, very talented. But I just think Saint Denis pulls it off. And it's going to be, this is the telling thing, right? This is right after that big Poirier situation. This is where the cream will rise with Saint Denis. A star will be born the same way that O'Malley recently at the Sphere had the ability to be in the stratosphere, like way out of here, fame-wise. He was approaching Conor, and unfortunately what happened, which is also an interesting story about Merab and his coach, and O'Malley's coach and everything. We'll talk about that next time, but lots of stuff to talk about, brother.
All right, Soccio, before we go, what is 6 feet tall? All the kids are talking about this. You've probably heard this 20 times, but I'm going to take a shot. What is 6 feet tall, charming, and disappears in an instant?